What are the benefits of cycling creatine? If you've been taking creatine for a while, you've probably heard this question: should I cycle it? Some people insist you need to take regular breaks to reset your body. Others say you can take it indefinitely without any issues. With so many conflicting opinions, it's easy to feel unsure about what's actually necessary. So what's the truth? Creatine is one of the most researched supplements available, and for healthy individuals, long-term daily use is generally considered safe. That said, some people still choose to cycle it, not because they have to, but because they prefer to. Today, we're breaking down the real benefits of cycling creatine. Not the myths, not the scare tactics, and not the bro science. Just practical reasons why some individuals decide to take breaks, what actually happens when you stop, and whether cycling might make sense for you. If you're wondering whether you should pause, continue, or adjust your approach, this will help you make a more informed decision. But before we begin, drop your name and the city you're watching from in the comments below. Alright, let's get started. Number 1. It gives you a mental reset. Sometimes the biggest benefit isn't physical, it's psychological. Creatine works at the cellular level, but the way you think about supplements can influence your performance just as much as physiology. Over time, some people begin to feel like they need creatine to train well. If they forget to take it, they assume their workout will suffer. If they run out, they feel anxious about losing progress. That mindset can quietly create psychological dependence. Cycling creatine, taking a planned break after a few months, can act as a mental reset. It reminds you that your strength doesn't come from a scoop of powder. It comes from months and years of training, discipline, recovery, and effort. When you step away temporarily and continue performing well, it builds confidence in your natural baseline ability. You realize your progress wasn't artificial, it wasn't borrowed strength, and it was earned. For some people, that realization is powerful. It reduces anxiety around missing a dose. It shifts focus back to fundamentals: smart programming, proper sleep, adequate protein, and progressive overload. Creatine becomes what it should be: a support tool, not a crutch. Cycling isn't required for safety in healthy individuals, but mentally, it can reinforce autonomy. It helps you remember that supplements enhance performance, they don't create it. And sometimes that psychological clarity is the most underrated benefit of all. Number 2, it helps you notice the difference. You don't realize what something does until it's gone. When you've been taking creatine consistently for months, its effects start to feel normal. Slightly better strength, a bit more endurance across sets, and muscles that look a little fuller. Because the changes build gradually, they blend into your baseline. Then, you stop. When you cycle off creatine, muscle creatine stores slowly decline over a few weeks. There's no dramatic crash, no sudden loss of all your progress. But you may begin to notice subtle shifts. Maybe your last few reps feel slightly harder, maybe recovery between sets isn't quite as smooth, and maybe your muscles look a little less full in the mirror. These changes are usually small, but they're informative. That comparison period can be valuable. It helps you separate the effect of the supplement from the effect of your training routine. If your strength and performance remain nearly identical, you'll know most of your progress is driven by consistent programming, nutrition, and recovery. If you notice a meaningful dip in output or recovery, that suggests creatine was providing real support. Either way, the experience gives you clarity. Cycling off isn't about losing gains, it's about awareness. When something is constantly present, it's hard to evaluate its true impact. Stepping away temporarily allows you to assess whether creatine meaningfully enhances your performance or simply complements an already strong routine. Number 3, it can reduce minor water retention. The scale doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the whole story either. When you're taking creatine consistently, one of the predictable effects is increased intracellular water. Creatine draws water into your muscle cells, which supports performance and gives muscles a slightly fuller appearance. That extra fluid has weight, and the scale reflects it. It's not fat, it's not bloating under the skin, and it's hydration inside the muscle. But when you cycle off creatine, muscle creatine stores gradually decline over several weeks. As they decrease, that additional intracellular water slowly drops as well. The result? A small reduction in body weight, often 1 to 3 pounds depending on the individual. For some people, that shift is neutral. For others, it feels significant. Endurance athletes in particular sometimes prefer feeling slightly lighter during specific phases of training or competition. In sports where efficiency, speed, or power-to-weight ratio matters, like distance running, cycling, or triathlon, even a small reduction in non-functional weight can feel beneficial. It doesn't mean creatine is harmful for endurance. But during certain periods, athletes may prioritize lightness over maximal strength output. Cycling off allows them to adjust based on their goals. The key is understanding what's happening. The weight change isn't muscle loss. It's water balance shifting. And sometimes, aligning body weight with performance goals is less about right or wrong and more about timing and preference. Number 4, it may improve digestive comfort. Not everyone tolerates creatine perfectly forever, and that's okay. While creatine is widely studied and generally well tolerated, individual responses can vary. Some people experience mild bloating, stomach discomfort, or occasional digestive upset during long-term use. This is more common when higher doses are taken, especially during loading phases of 15-20 grams per day. For many, the issue isn't creatine itself, it's the amount. Large, single doses can draw water into the intestines, which may cause temporary bloating or loose stools. Over time, even moderate daily doses can feel slightly uncomfortable for certain individuals, particularly if taken on an empty stomach or without adequate fluids. In these cases, cycling off can be helpful. Taking a short break allows the digestive system to settle and reset. During that time, muscle creatine stores will gradually decline, but there's no dramatic crash in performance. It's simply a pause. When you decide to restart, beginning at a moderate dose, typically 3 to 5 grams per day, often improves tolerance significantly. Splitting the dose or taking it with meals can also reduce digestive discomfort. Sometimes the solution isn't quitting permanently, it's adjusting the approach. Your body isn't malfunctioning if you need a break, it's responding. And listening to those signals, then restarting intelligently, can make creatine feel smoother and more sustainable long-term. Number 5, it simplifies blood work interpretation. Lab tests can cause unnecessary panic, especially when you don't have the full context. If you've ever reviewed your blood work and noticed creatinine slightly elevated, it can immediately trigger concern. Since creatinine is commonly used as a marker for kidney function, higher levels are often associated with possible kidney stress. For someone taking creatine, this can be alarming. Here's the key distinction. Creatine supplementation naturally increases the amount of creatinine in your bloodstream because creatinine is a breakdown product of creatine metabolism. In healthy individuals with normal kidney function, this mild elevation does not automatically indicate kidney damage. It often reflects increased creatine availability, not impaired filtration. The problem is interpretation. If your healthcare provider doesn't know you're supplementing, mildly elevated creatinine can lead to repeat testing, additional monitoring, or unnecessary anxiety. Even when kidney function is perfectly normal, the numbers alone can look suspicious without context. This is one practical reason some people choose to cycle off creatine a few weeks before routine blood work. Allowing muscle creatine levels to decline temporarily can help creatinine values return closer to personal baseline levels. That can make lab interpretation clearer and reduce confusion. Cycling off isn't about fear, it's about clarity. If you regularly get blood work and want the cleanest comparison to previous non-supplemented labs, a short break beforehand can simplify the conversation and prevent unnecessary worry. Number 6. It aligns with training phases. Not every training phase requires maximum power output. Creatine is especially effective during strength and power-focused blocks. When your goal is to lift heavier weights, increase explosive output, or maximize high-intensity performance, creatine directly supports those adaptations by enhancing ATP regeneration. In those phases, it makes perfect sense to keep muscle creatine stores fully saturated. But training isn't always about pushing maximum loads. There are periods where your focus shifts. Maybe you're entering a lighter reload cycle to allow recovery. Maybe you're prioritizing endurance work, longer sessions, lower intensity, higher volume. Or perhaps you're in a cutting phase where body weight, conditioning, and recovery efficiency take center stage. During these phases, maximal power output may not be the priority. Some athletes choose to cycle off creatine temporarily during these blocks. If strength isn't the main goal, maintaining peak phosphocreatine levels may feel less essential. In endurance-focused phases, a slight reduction in intracellular water weight might even feel beneficial. In cutting phases, some prefer seeing the scale reflect lean tissue more clearly without additional water shifts. This approach isn't mandatory, it's strategic. Cycling creatine allows your supplementation to align with your current objectives. When you transition back into a strength or hypertrophy phase, you can resume supplementation to support higher output again. Training evolves in cycles. Your supplementation can evolve with it. Number 7. It encourages smarter supplement habits. Cycling forces you to be intentional. When you take creatine year-round without pause, it can quietly become automatic, just another scoop in your routine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, especially if it's working well for you. But sometimes, habits become so routine that you stop thinking about why you're doing them. Cycling changes that. When you decide to take a structured break, you're making a conscious choice. You're evaluating your goals, your current training phase, your recovery, and your overall health. Instead of operating on autopilot, you're engaging with your plan. That awareness often spills into other areas. You may pay closer attention to hydration because you understand how creatine affects fluid balance. You might reconsider dosing, choosing a steady 3 to 5 grams instead of unnecessarily high amounts. You may align supplementation more precisely with strength blocks, instead of taking it simply because you always have. Cycling can also make you more thoughtful about programming. If you notice performance changes when you stop, you'll better understand how creatine supports high-intensity phases. If you don't notice much difference, you'll gain confidence that your foundation, training, nutrition, and recovery is doing most of the heavy lifting. Intentional use builds understanding. Instead of being dependent on a routine, you're directing it. And that shift from automatic to deliberate often leads to smarter decisions across your entire fitness strategy, not just supplementation. Number 8. It proves you're not dependent. Here's the truth. Your body doesn't crash without it. One of the biggest fears people have about stopping creatine is the idea of losing everything overnight. They imagine strength disappearing, muscles shrinking instantly, or workout suddenly feeling impossible. But that's not how physiology works. When you stop taking creatine, your muscle creatine stores gradually decline over several weeks. It's a slow return to your natural baseline, not a sudden drop. There's no withdrawal effect, no hormonal crash, and no abrupt loss of muscle tissue. What you might notice, if anything, is subtle. Maybe you lose a bit of that extra muscle fullness from intracellular water. Maybe your top-end strength dips slightly during high-intensity sets. But your foundational strength, the muscle you built through training, doesn't vanish. That's because creatine supports performance. It doesn't manufacture it. Cycling off helps reinforce that understanding. It shows you that creatine is a tool, one that enhances output and recovery, but not the source of your discipline, consistency, or work ethic. Your strength comes from progressive overload. Your muscle comes from proper nutrition, and your resilience comes from recovery and time. Creatine simply amplifies those efforts. When you realize your body functions normally without it, fear disappears. You gain confidence in your baseline ability, and that perspective shifts creatine from something you depend on to something you strategically choose to use. So, what are the real benefits of cycling creatine? It offers a mental reset. It helps you evaluate effectiveness. It may reduce water retention and digestive issues. It simplifies lab work, and it keeps your supplement strategy intentional. Now here's the important part. Cycling isn't required for most healthy individuals. Research shows long-term use is generally safe when taken responsibly. But cycling can be a strategic choice depending on your goals, comfort, and training style. At the end of the day, creatine isn't magic, it's support. Whether you cycle or stay consistent year-round, what matters most is training, sleep, nutrition, and hydration. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever cycled off creatine? Did you notice any difference in strength, energy, or how you felt? Drop your experience in the comments, and if you'd like a follow-up video on how long to cycle, best dosage strategies, or creatine after 50, hit like, subscribe, and let me know. Because smarter supplementation always beats blind trends.